Hello everyone and good morning. Welcome to my studio. I am Susan Smith. I am here working on an actual quilt today. It is my own this time and it's called Crimson Christmas, patterned by Krista Moser. I'll give you more details later on that. But it's one that I've been piecing. I had a couple of live sessions in the last 10 days or so, late October, early November, where I was working on piecing this quilt, just very casual but live again from my studio. So today I'm going to be adding the quilting to it. So it's simple quilting. We'll talk about that more in a moment too, but it's just going to be so fun to see it all come together. So in the course of just a few episodes, you get to go from scrappy red and white and green fabrics to pieced quilt to finished product. So I haven't thought about the binding. Might have to air that one live too, just for cuz. Anyway, that's what we're doing. So I call this show Live and Unscripted because typically I am working on, most often, a client quilt, sometimes my own or maybe my sister's or a friend's. But these are real episodes working on real quilts. They're not lessons, so please don't expect that. Sometimes, some fabrics show up the quilting design that I'm doing better than others. I don't plan the shows to show the quilting specifically or teach it. I plan them more to talk about the big picture, how I load the quilt, how I advance it and keep it straight and flat, how I deal with challenges perhaps like wavy borders or that sort of thing. So this is a big picture type of episode. It is streamed live, and so warts and all, you get to see exactly how things go down in my studio. So I think with that, we'll go ahead. Let's see, what have we missed? I know what we've missed. I want to give you a proper intro from my son, Will. Here he is to tell you a little bit about who I am.
Welcome to Live and Unscripted with Susan Smith, Quilting's first reality show.
Hey everyone, that's my son Will introducing me, and I always get my little pre-intro before him too long. That's just me loving to talk. So thanks to Will for doing that. He does all kinds of different voices introducing my show. So if you come back for other shows, you'll get to hear other voices. Huge thanks to him. Also, this show is particularly sponsored by Stitch House in Richardson, Texas. I'm collaborating with Stitch House to do some lessons, some in-store appearances, and there's one coming up this coming week. So if you're interested in watching one of these live and unscripted shows, in the studio audience, you can actually do that. So November 14 and 15, I will be in Stitch House's shop teaching and showing similar content to what I'm doing here. It'll of course be a different quilt, but this real live idea of seeing the whole thing as a work in progress. So Stitch House in Richardson, Texas. I know my husband, Mr. Producer, is putting links on the screen for you. So a huge thanks to him also. This is not a one-woman show by any means. We always have 4 cameras and sometimes 5 going. So he's the guy behind the scenes that mans all of that and controls which view you're seeing and sound levels and solves problems on the fly. So a huge thanks to Dave, Mr. Producer, for doing that for us. And also our good friend Dan graciously allows us to use his guitar music. So you'll be hearing that in the mix of music today. And we sure do appreciate that. Okay. Let's get started on our quilt. Yes, one more sip of coffee, fuel, and we're on our way. All right, today's quilt is Christmassy, and as so often, I don't decide on my backing necessarily until I've got the quilt pieced and just kind of get a feel for what I want it to look like. But this felt like a no-brainer to me, having a red backing and also making it cozy. It's not a very large quilt, so I want it still to be cozy. So having the weight and the heft of cuddle fabric is going to be very sweet, I think, on the back of it. So I've gone with this pretty basic, pretty traditional Christmas red. Clearly my end elastics are not quite tight enough. They're not holding up my leader here. Let me adjust that. Okay. So I planned how much backing I purchased so that I can load the selvage edge on my front and back rail. That's my favorite way to do it because then you're controlling the amount of stretch. In other episodes, fairly recently, I did one where I had to load it the other way, and it was a bit of a process to control that. But selvage edge, top and bottom, is certainly the easiest way to use a cuddle or minky type of fabric. Loading with my red snappers. Super simple, super quick. And I think I probably have tons of backing You know how it goes. You get to the shop and you're like, oh shoot, I should have looked at the measurements of my quilt. I could have got away with a bit less, but no worries. Look at that. It fits 2 red snappers like it was made for it. So I've just tossed all the rest of the backing over the rail, draping it down on the far side of the long arm, making sure that it is smooth, that it's not pulling to the left or to the right, so that when I roll it on, it rolls on straight. Super simple, super fast. When I do see creases forming in the middle, as you can probably see there on camera, I just take a moment and adjust, smooth that out. This is a really fast way of loading, but you do have to take the precautions of knowing that it is rolling on straight and without creases or folds. And cuddle fabric does have quite a bit of stretch and give, right? And so it just takes a little bit of adjustment here and there. I do really enjoy using Cuddle because unlike some other brands of velvety type fabrics, you can get it in 90 inches wide, and therefore you don't need seams. It's really hard to put a seam in this type of fabric and have it look good because you're dealing with nap, you know, all that velvety stuff. I have to pull it this way just a little. I'll try and do it evenly all the way along. I wound it a touch too far. That's better. Oh, and I'll be vacuuming this afternoon, all the little fuzzies. I even took it outside and gave it a brisk shake before I started loading, but there still is inevitably little fuzzies that release as you work. There we go. Backing loaded. And I do make sure that I do not put extra tension on this. Like I only wind it tight enough to hold it smooth, right? So there it's literally sagging. I only put enough tension on to hold it smooth, and that's it. We don't want to stretch it out of shape, that's for sure. Okay, and my batting, I'm using Bamboo by Winline, my personal favorite. Those of you who watch regularly know that I often use 80/20 poly cotton, which I love also, but the Bamboo is particularly luxurious and it's my go-to for my own quilts these days. Dave, is it better if I go toward the right or toward the left? Right. As I said, I have plenty of my Cuddle backing, and notice the little red fuzzies on here. I'll kind of have to watch for that because there are white parts on the quilt. I don't want them to show through. Although on all the dark parts of the quilt, it's really not going to matter. Okay, you guys, ready for the big reveal? I've had them laying folded up, so there's red fuzzies all over this poor quilt. I know you can't see the whole thing, but I promise I'll post pictures at some point. I love this quilt, and it actually goes this way in Krista's pictures. So, details on the quilt pattern. It is Crimson Christmas by Krista Moser, The Quilted Life. The pattern is available on her website. I have put the links already in the description. I bet Dave will put them in the chat too, but you can look in the description below this episode also and find them. And I know that Krista is running a like a sew along this week that started a couple of days ago. And so if you wanted to sew it with some extra support and help from her, you might want to look on her website and follow the links on that. When I purchased my pattern, Crimson Christmas is the pattern. When I purchased my pattern, I automatically got an email that, sent it to me, the download, because I purchased it digitally, and then invited me to the sew along. So I'm not sure if that is still true. So I'm going to do something on here that I don't do on every quilt, but I think it's valuable today, and that is run a line of horizontal stitching across the batting and fabric just to hold the batting in place because it wants to slide. This minky is a little bit slippery. So we'll just run one line of stitching. We can do 1/2 inch stitching. We don't need much, just to keep it from slipping out of place. This is something you certainly can do on any quilt to give yourself a nice straight line to begin with. I have channel locks, or more specifically, I can lock my belts in place so I get a perfectly horizontal line, and it does give you a nice straight line to work from, for sure. But I know not everyone has that, so sometimes you can run your machine like along your red snapper rails, or other ways that you can do a workaround. But I have that capability, so that's what I did. And now I can line my quilt up along that and know that batting's not going to slip out of place. We should talk about thread just a touch. I'm going to go grab 1 or 2 off my shelf actually to show you. And I'll move Stella so you guys can see. And we'll just talk a touch about the threads. I will move Stella the long arm so we can see the threads. And you can see how there is still some sag in here just from the weight of that cuddle. So I'll probably crank it down 1 more notch, but I really, really don't want to stretch it. Okay, thread. There's a lot of different fabrics in this quilt. There is. There's white and grayish whites and tannish whites in the white poinsettia. Obviously, there's multiple shades of red. The poinsettia that you can't see from there has even lighter shades of red in it. There's the greens, and then of course there's the charcoal, or in the pattern, Krista actually calls for a black background. So that's a broad range of color. So what thread to use? Well, the quilting I'm going to do is simple. I've already decided that I'm just going to quilt straight horizontal lines. I want simple quilting. I don't want to have another story being told laid on top of my poinsettia. So I love straight lines for that. Still, what color thread am I going to use? I mean, the most prominent or visible fabric is the red. However, I feel like the red is way too strong, especially on the white, but even on the black, it's just very, very vivid against that. So I right away decided nope to the red. Then I looked at this one, which is one of my current favorites. It's 0184 by Isacord. It's a unique thread in that it seems to pick up the color that you lay it on. So it's kind of a silvery color, but I actually can get away with using it on white because it looks like a shadow. So I thought of that one because I quite liked it against the white. And when I'm testing my threads, I do always spool out like a couple yards of it. And then I take that little puddle and I move it around and see what it looks like on all the fabrics. I love that on the white, but it is the reverse of the red. It's super high contrast still on the charcoal areas and on the red and even on the green. So I thought that's a little severe, but I did leave it laying. And what I finally settled on was 3971 is the color number, also by Isacord, 100% poly. And I don't even know if you can see it on camera. It's just a couple 3 shades darker than this one. So it just goes a little more toward that middle of the road, a little darker than the white, obviously, lighter than the charcoal and the red, but shows up somewhat on all of them. So that's what I finally decided to do. And I'm using the same thread on the bobbin. And I know it will show up on the red cuddle fabric, but I'm okay with that. I did not want to try and do red in the bobbin and gray on the top. To me, that's way too far of a span of contrast, and my red is apt to pop through and show. Like on my white, I would not like that look at all. I'd rather see the gray on the red cuddle than see the red popping through and showing up in various places on the other fabrics. Make sense? So those were my thread choices. I will just put them out of the way. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and engage my belts in both directions so I get a nice square basting line. Now on my Bernina, I'm lucky enough to have a feature called, what is it called? Glide, I think, Super Glide, something like that. Basically, it means that even though I've got my belts engaged that resist movement in both directions, once I start moving, it kind of picks up and glides me along, but keeps me in that straight line. So I can actually have my belts engaged and quilt my basting lines without having to undo them, which is kind of cool. That's just one of the features of my machine. And I am, by the way, stitching on a Bernina Q24. I think I introduced her already. Her name is Stella. I like to baste with a 1/4 inch stitch. That's not critical. It's just what I happen to like. I have it at my fingertips at the push of a button, so it is my favorite. So having those belts engaged now means that I will get, for sure, I will get a perfectly straight line up this side, a perfectly 90-degree corner at the top. And I am working with a quilt that has angled cuts, so bias edges all through it. So squaring it up, keeping it square, is going to be something I need to be conscious of as I'm quilting, because I certainly could stretch this out of shape like crazy. And I will certainly try not to. It's nice and straight across the top. I'm just a little too low. It keeps pulling. I've noticed this with bias edges. I'll show you in a moment what I'm talking about here. When I'm too close to that basted edge, it all too easily, not the basted edge, but the bias edge, it all too easily pushes it down, and I don't like that. So I'm just going to undo those couple inches and move my basting line down a little bit more. All that I'm concerned about is that my basting is less than a 1/4 inch from the edge, so that it's hidden in my binding and I don't have to undo it. So we'll just undo a little bit of that. Started a touch closer to me. Mr. Producer is asking me to pause a second. What's happening? Oh yes, let me just mention this one. I welcome your questions and comments throughout, but if you do have questions, would you precede them with QQ? That enables Dave to search for them and pull them all up at once to try not to miss any. So I will pause at various times to answer some questions while I get a sip of coffee, and we'll try and get to all of them before the end of the show. Okay, I've moved down like 1/8 of an inch. That's all I need. And I'm going to take my time across here because those bias edges are wanting to shift or wanting to stretch. So I'm just, you really can't see it from where you are, but I'm keeping a weather eye on the whole thing. Like, don't let it be pushing fabric out in front of the hopper foot, etc. So if I go slow enough, I can make those little adjustments as I baste. And the adjustments usually involve pulling on the fabric that's already been stitched to pull this fabric underneath the needle a little faster and not let it stretch out in front. Make sure it's all square. Again, these are all bias edges. Certainly I could have chosen to take a victory lap, a line of basting stitching all around the perimeter of the quilt. That might have been wise. I didn't. I'm very well aware of the bias that I'm dealing with, so I'm just prepared to address it with each pass. But that would be kind of an option to give yourself a level of security. Okay, now we are going to take a moment to put our side clamps on and then answer a few questions, and then we'll start into the quilting. The quilting is not going to be very complicated today. It's just the straight horizontal lines. So in case you are just tuning in, the pattern I'm working on once again is Crimson Christmas by Krista Moser of the Quilted Life. It's a new pattern that she just released this season, just a couple weeks ago. And yeah, I caught the edge of my quilt just a little bit right here, and I'm just going to go back and stitch over it just a touch. I already took my basting stitch off, but it doesn't matter. I just don't want that to shift when I'm quilting, so I just want to secure that. Cut off all those thread tails. Perfect. Okay, let me get my magic elixir cup, and we'll take a few questions and comments, and then we'll start quilting. No, I'll do them after. Mr. Producer, he is on the ball. He's like, do you want to be doing your edge clamps before you take a break for coffee? Because I did say that. I know I did. But I already have coffee in hand. So let's take some questions or comments. Diana, have you ever tried sew tights for the long arm? I'm absolutely loving them. I load my quilts so quickly. Do you know, I've seen them, and I've seen quilters use them. I love my red snappers, and they're so comfortable for me. And sew tights are quite an investment, dollar-wise. So I have not used them to fully load a quilt. I see the advantages. I think they're a great system, frankly. And if red snappers for some reason, you know, don't work for hand strength or whatever for someone, I think they're a great option. Noreen, could you show a close-up of what you did to secure the thread on that cone? Secure the thread on the cone. Oh, when I unraveled it. Sure, let me grab one of my spare cones. And I think, Noreen, you're going to find that this has to do with brand of thread. Can we show it in a close-up? I can show it right here, actually. Isacord, the brand, this is how their cones are made. They have a base that snaps downward and opens a groove in there, right? So I've just wound around that groove, and when I snap that bottom up, it pinches in place and holds it. Some brands just don't have that. So it's one of the things I love about Isacord, got to tell you. Get my coffee back in hand, and I am standing well away from the quilt, just so you know. Judy, out of all the long arm machines you've owned, which one has been your favorite? So I've only owned two brands, Gamble and Bernina, and my two Gamble machines were really similar in how they ran. I don't know that I have a favorite, really. They each have their own features. The Gamble was a faster machine, like faster stitches per inch capabilities, which was nice. But the Bernina has other features that I love. So really, it's an individual thing. I talk about some of my favorite Bernina features, like using regular sewing machine needles and therefore being able to have a needle threader. Those are enormous things. The fact that it all threads right at the front. I don't have to walk around to put cones on the back. Like there's just little things that I absolutely love about it. But I know, you know, there are features about a Novas that people love. I mean, a handy quilter, it can be price point, it can be sound, it can be ease of threading. Like there are always these different features. So I can't honestly say my favorite, other than my current one is usually my favorite. So, Debbie, with using Cuddle on the back, the thread sinks into it and you see the quilting without seeing the thread, so no need to match the color. I basically agree. The color difference on the back does not bother me at all because it shows so little.
Oh, you already did that.
Yeah, we did that one. Roxanne, I'm going to try Isacord for the first time. Do you adjust your tensions at all when using Isacord? Well, it's the one I use most, so I've kind of got my tension figured out for the Isacord, but at this point I have Bernina's default basic tensions on, so I did not have to make any major adjustments. Isacord, because it is 100% poly, Glide this will hold true for as well, or Wonderfill. It's a little bit slipperier. So for example, when I'm winding my bobbin, I go twice around the tension control for winding the bobbin. So I make little adjustments like that, but I don't have to fiddle with the tension. It works pretty straightforwardly. Luda, when you basted, do you use basting stitches or just make longer stitches? I use basting stitches because my machine, at the touch of a button, I can do 4 stitches per inch or 2 or 1, just with the touch of a button. I like 4. That's just what I like, but it doesn't matter. You can use any stitch length that you want to. Elizabeth, with the cuddle back, do you have to loosen bobbin thread tension compared to cotton backing? I don't know. I don't make any significant changes to that, no. Wibble Puppy, how do you choose whether to quilt those lines running vertically or horizontally? Strictly personal preference. In general, I prefer the horizontal ones. You can see the quilt behind me. This one I actually did. It's a digital design. I doubt that you can see it on camera, but there's a little bit of secondary design in there. There's jogs in the lines, so I did that one digitally. But you can see by and large, it's running horizontally. That's just my personal taste. Wendy, for a cuddle backing, especially for linear lines, do you check the underside after basting to be sure it's starting smoothly and straight? I'm new to cuddle backing, but really want to try it. I don't make a point of it, Wendy, but I'll also say as an addendum to that, I've become so conscious of the fact that I quilt quite a lot, and I know the sound and the feel of my thread. Like, even when I pull up my bobbin thread and pull on it, I know what that should feel like. I know exactly what my machine should sound like when I'm starting out. And if that sound differs, that's what tells me there's a gnarl on the back, right? And so I listen and am attuned for that, so I don't necessarily look underneath. But absolutely do if you have a question about it, for sure. Catherine, hello from Virginia. What is the weight of the thread you're using? Thank you. It's a 40 weight. It's Isocord's kind of run-of-the-mill embroidery thread that they've been selling for years to machine embroiderers, but it's very well suited to long arm quilting as well. Donna, where do you find sew snaps? As in the red snappers, I assume is what you're asking about. For one thing, they're available on Amazon, and I do have a link in the description below my YouTube episodes to find them there. But the lady who invented them and produces them is Renee, and she's quiltsonthecorner.com. I'm sure Mr. Producer will type that in for you, quiltsonthecorner.com, so you can buy directly from her shop. If for whatever reason they're out of stock, I did put an Amazon link in, but support Renee directly if you can, by all means. Donna, nails look awesome, Susan. Thank you. They're my Christmassy little red tips, my nod to Christmas. Barbara, a few days ago you used painter's tape on the back edge. When do you and don't you? Oh, super question, Barbara. Let me put my coffee aside. Barbara's referring to, I think it might have been the last quilt that I did live, also had a cuddle backing. And I had a line of blue painter's tape along that first edge, and you're asking why. It's because I loaded the fabric the opposite way, so the selvages were on the sides, and I had the very stretchy bit toward me at the front. So this was actually a tip that came to me from a viewer, and I have adopted it. It's great. Someone suggested sewing along that front edge, and someone else suggested lay painter's tape along it. So that's what I did. Before I loaded my backing at all, I spread it out flat on the floor so I knew it wasn't stretched. You could see the whole thing. And I laid a long strip of painter's tape along that edge, and that just secured it so it couldn't stretch and give, right? And so then I did my loading just right below that painter's tape, and it just controlled the stretch. So that was a super tip. One more use for blue painter's tape. I've got to buy me shares in that company. Catherine, the quilt's in the back. Can you tell me the E to E pattern? I have a quilt that I've loaded that is screaming for that E to E pattern. Catherine, let me do it this way. Would you email me and I'll try and send you a link to the shop where I got it. I don't want to misrepresent it, and I've only bought the one pattern from that shop, so I can't even tell you the name off the top of my head. I can't. I'm sorry. So email me, susan@stitchedbysusan.com, and I will respond with a link to the edge to edge that's on this quilt. Okay, you guys, let's get quilting. Mr. Producer says that's it for questions. I personally like, can't talk and think at the same time. I personally like slightly under 1/2 inch spacing, so that's what I'm going to go for on the edge here. I'm probably just going to do it by eye, although you certainly could get a ruler set up for it too. So I've got my belts engaged, so I've now got a straight line in place. I do want to disengage my horizontal ones. Did I do that right? Yep. So now I can move freely from left to right, but it's held in place horizontally, so I'll get a nice straight line. And here we go. Beautiful. And I've just started about 1/4 inch below that top basting line. Okay, maybe I'll get a ruler going. Let's see, till I at least get in the groove. little collection of rulers. Okay, use for blue painter's tape number 157. It's difficult to read the measurements, and also I like a line that's just under a 1/2 inch. So this is what I like to do. I just put a piece of blue painter's tape on there. Oh, sorry, I wasn't under the camera. I've just got a piece of blue painter's tape. I want my lines to be slightly less than 1/2 inch apart. So I'm just going to put my blue painter's tape on there at about 3/8, right? And there's my measurement. So I just advance till my needle is next to that blue tape. Pretty close. I'm going to turn BSR2 on so it stops when I stop. And away I go. And I'm pausing because you know what I forgot? Side clamps. So interesting story here. Hang on a second, I got to crawl under my machine. My elastic is caught on some of our million wires here. Okay. One of the things about minky or cuddle type fabrics is they're too thick to fit in my little snappers, which I'll show you in just a second, that go on the edges, my side clamps. I'll show you what they look like here. I'm on this camera. They have such a slim little channel in there that the fabric's got to fit into. Sometimes I can get it to slide in, but it's really hard to because of the thickness and because of the stretch. So my answer for that is I just use my basic clamps on the edges. They're not very tight, like they're basically just the weight of them holding onto the quilt. And also, because I've got a fair bit of excess here, they don't get in the way because they're thick. And they just seem to pull nice and evenly. So this works for cuddle fabric for me. I'm sure there are other clamps I could get, but I don't. I just go ahead and use these. And we have a skipped stitch. We did say warts and all. Now, I gave Stella a really stern pep talk before we started because I bet all you long armers know already that sometimes when you're stitching left to right, you get this twisting of thread and you get thread shredding. Now, I do a fair bit, like notice the quilt behind me, I do a fair bit of, I'm trying to do this where you can see, but also where I can get at it. I do a fair bit of straight line quilting, and Stella does a pretty darn good job of stitching in both directions. But I did give her a stern talking to this morning. I said, don't you dare mess up on air. And here we are with one mess up already. So we'll see. Worst case scenario, and I have done this a time or two, worst case scenario, you just stop every line and start again on the left side. It can be done. Piece of trivia while I'm undoing. In my most recent episode, and it would have been in late October, also the one that had cuddle on the back, I was doing a digitized design, and inadvertently I had loaded a version of the design that was only left to right, and honestly I did not know till that day, till a viewer clued me in, that that was even a thing. And so what happened was it instructed me that way. It just quilted one direction, one line, and then it was like stop, break thread, go start at the other end. And it confused me because I had never seen a digital design like that. But now I know that is available, and that's actually a really great thing that digital designers do that, because I know some people just really have trouble with that at their machines. And this gives them the option still of doing patterns like the one that I was using, which was Cable Knit by Long Arm League, or designs like this. You can do them one line at a time. And all I'm doing is backing up to where there's a seam allowance and where it's less visible. So I'm going to go just to the edge of that gray. I'm going to get my line lined up again. Now, piece of trivia. I felt that. I took one stitch and I felt it catch incorrectly. And look at this. My thread has in fact shredded. And I could feel that little catch, which alerted me to what I hadn't even seen yet. Everybody send Stella good vibes right now. Or, you know, threaten her. Like, smarten up, straighten up and fly right. So I've just overlapped my stitching, a good 1/4 inch, maybe more than a 1/4 inch. The stitching that was already there. and in that seam allowance, which just gives some thickness because there's more layers of fabric, some security to my lock stitches, and then we're up, up, and away. Fingers crossed. I don't know if it's necessary, but I tend to go much slower when I'm going from right to left. I feel like I have a better chance of avoiding the thread shreds. So here we are on the white. This is our first chance to really see. Are we happy with the gray on the white? As we build up more quilting, we'll be able to make that decision better. But I'll tell you what, I'm not undoing it. Gray is what's happening. Okay, and I've got my trusty ruler. It's a little bit wide. Here is one of my best tips for straight line stitching at the long arm. If you've ever worked at a domestic machine, you know that when you alternate directions in which you stitch, you tend to get little pulls in the fabric as it almost twists under your needle. And this can happen at the long arm too. Usually less than at a domestic, but it can happen. And so the way to avoid that is to put a little bit of pressure on the part that's already been stitched. Much like I did with the basting at the top. All you're doing is pulling it under the needle a little touch faster and not letting it push out in front of you. And that little bit of attention makes all the difference in the world. Trust me, I have quilted a lot of quilts with straight lines, and they come out looking beautifully flat without that twist evident. Good job, Stella. You made a whole line. Right to left. And this quilt is quite nice and flat, but if you've got a quilt that does have any fullness in it or irregularities, that idea of putting a little weight on it, on the bit that's already been stitched, can really come in helpful too, to help you ease in little smidges of fullness. Good job, Stella. Good job. Do you guys talk to your long arms too? I don't talk to my plants, I just kill house plants, but I do talk to my sewing machines. They thrive. So I'm now spacing my lines by guess and by gosh. Is it perfect? Maybe not. Does it suit me? Yes, it does. I'm happy with that gray stitching. Mr. Producer's interrupting me just a second while I listen to him. So Mr. Producer's asking, and I noticed this too, when I'm not hanging onto the handlebar where the camera is, you guys can kind of see the camera apparatus, it wobbles a lot more, and usually when I'm free motion quilting, I'm hanging onto it and it provides that extra stability. So here's the thing, when I'm going left to right, I can, but when I'm going the other direction, I usually want to have one hand on the fabric. So maybe we just want to have the big overall picture, Mr. Producer, sir. Okay. Well, just, I apologize for the wobblies, like that's just part of it. That's just the vibration of the machine. When I can, I'll hold it. It does make a difference, I can see that. And now, you guys, we just rinse and repeat. This is a great opportunity for an Audible book or a podcast you've been wanting to listen to, because this just takes time. It's not taxing by any means, it just takes time. It's hard to get my machine to just make a tiny adjustment. There we go. Okay, a few comments about the quilt itself as I'm quilting. Krista, the pattern designer, and I should just say that whole spiel again quick. Krista Moser, the Quilted Life, designed this pattern, and it's called Crimson Quilt. We've got links in the chat and links in the description, so you can find all the details if you're wanting one too. She has a kit available, and it's a little bit complex fabric choosing because she's got, for example, first light red, second light red, first medium red, second medium red, and darks, and so forth and so on. And so I decided that I wanted to use fabrics that I had in my stash and just supplement them a little bit. And so that's what I did. I just went into my stash and I pulled out all the reds I owned, and then I just sorted and played with them until I was happy with, 2 lights, 2 mediums, 2 darks. And same thing for the lighter poinsettia. It had definite lights, definite mediums, and definite darks. So that was just a fun thing about it. So then I had to kind of think that through, and I did have to make a couple of changes. As I was doing the piecing, I did end up making some changes because I wasn't happy with the placement. Okay, I want to show you guys something right here. Can you see this slight zig that happens on that line of stitching? That's what I mean when I say when you're going in opposing directions, you get this little bit of twist that happens. And this is not going to show up, I don't think, significantly in the finished quilt, but the way to avoid that is by putting this bit of pressure on what's already stitched, pulling what is to be stitched under the needle faster. So I'll change directions with my hand, but you can see why it doesn't work very well for me to hold both handlebars to stop the camera vibrating, because I'm going to get this with the lines, and I don't love that look, right? You end up getting this zigzaggy look. So that's how you stop it. So I'm literally putting, probably 2 or 3 pounds of pressure onto that seam line behind what's being stitched to hold it in place, to keep those lines from pushing in front of my needle. And it keeps them beautifully straight. Can you see that? We'll go across that green one again, and we will not have a zig this time. No zigs, no zags. It's also what keeps you from getting this little rill at the end, which is so common when you do straight line stitching. If you just start out at one side and quilt to the other side, you're apt to get that, a little pleat that forms at the edge. Same method for avoiding it. Have your hand pulling it into position under the needle. If you happen to be stitching on a machine that's got channel lock on and off at the touch of a button, it's easier for you to make those fine adjustments to the line spacing. For me, it's tough because my belt is engaged. It's not an easy pull, so adjusting half a stitch worth is a bit tricky. Like right here, it's hard to adjust just a touch. It wants to jerk. So that's just something you get used to, whatever machine you've got. Get about 10 more lines done, and then I will move Stella off to the left and we'll have a good look at it. See if it even shows up on camera. And you know what? After all my side clamp talking, I still don't have them on this left side. Now I do. I try really hard to talk and function at the same time, but sometimes I'm more successful than others. There are not a ton of straight lines in this quilt, but wherever I do have a horizontal straight line, I'm kind of using that as a gauge. You know, how are my lines doing? Are they staying nice and straight and parallel? Do I need to make any adjustments when I advance the quilt next time to zhuzh it into position? While I do these last few lines, I know Mr. Producer ran a quick intro to the cruise in the countdown, but in case you missed that, we've got a machine quilting cruise coming up in January. It's getting close. We're starting to get excited. And there are only 3 cabins left. So, time's getting short. You can still nab one of those 3 cabins if you wish. Here's what it looks like. I've invited Beth Ann Nemish along and Sam Alberts, who are 2 very accomplished machine quilters, but a very different style from mine. So I'm very much your couch quilt, family-friendly quilting style. Beth Ann is extremely intricate and artistic. Yarn couching, you know, lots of artistic things show up in her quilts. Sam Alberts is quite contemporary as to style, so a lot of line work and ruler work and what I call some really original ideas for quilting that I've not seen other quilters doing. So these ladies are both coming on the At Sea days. We're going to be having a series of classes, and we've timed them such that you can, if you wish, catch all of them. And even we ladies are talking with each other to plan them so they kind of coordinate, and you get this very rich, very broad experience, as opposed to just having 3 very different teachers teaching 3 very different things, right? We want it to feel cohesive. Style-wise, they are going to be lecture-based. There simply is not enough room on a boat to have long arms for everybody. We will have 2 there that hopefully you can get small amounts of time to check out those machines, but they're not hands-on classes. So they are lecture-based, but we are recording them, so everybody on the boat gets to take those recordings with them, gets access to those recordings after the cruise. So you have an opportunity to watch and rewatch them. In addition, all 3 of us are entrepreneurs. We all make quilting our business. And so we're going to have, oh, how did I get a wavy line? Stella. While I undo that, I'll keep talking. We're going to have this kind of optional a la carte sort of menu of more informal breakfasts and sessions that we're calling business breakouts. So I know Sam is doing some on video content and like how to store your library and organize it and things like that. I'm doing one on photographing quilts, you know, which certainly is useful and important for a business, but honestly is useful for just anyone quilting that wants to keep, you know, an album or memories of their various quilts. So not too complicated, but these little breakout sessions. Our videographer will be doing one as well. So lots of rich information there. And then of course on the in-port days, you have the opportunity to do any of the excursions that the boat is offering. So lots of fun to be had. That is just funny how I got that little wavy line there. Couple 3 more lines and I'll be at the bottom, and then we'll step back and take a look at the whole. I can tell you this, I'm happy with the thread choice. It shows up somewhat on all the fabrics, and that was my goal. I didn't want it to be super vivid on some of them and practically disappear on others. And yet taken as a whole, it's pretty subtle. When the quilt is all finished, it will not be the first thing you see, and that's what I like. I think we're done with the ruler. We're definitely winging this spacing. Some of you in the room may be digital quilters, computerized quilters, but one of the things I like about quilting freehand is that I can choose to go slowly, like over areas where there are thick seam allowances, I have so much control over that, and boy do I ever love that. It seems like those are the areas where you often end up with the thread shreds, if your machine is going fast over things like that. Stella is just doing a spectacular job. I hope you guys are complimenting her, because make her feel good about herself. She's doing a great job. I gotta tell you, it is honestly a worry. Those of you who are faithful viewers will know I have had some catastrophes on air and days when things just won't go right. And I did worry just a smidge about this today. I was like, is this all gonna go smoothly or not? Here we are, and it's going great. Last line, then we'll stop for some questions and some visiting, and to take a look at our quilt. And I will say one thing here. Typically when I'm doing an edge-to-edge design, I will often just stop with needle down and advance my quilt and then keep going. But when I'm doing straight line quilting, I do break thread and disconnect my machine. Because if I leave the needle down, even if I take my belts, even if I unengage them, it will pull on those lines and stretch and distort them a little bit. And I want them to stay parallel. I don't want even an 1/8 or a 16th inch of difference. So I do fully stop, break thread, and disconnect my machine so that it forwards as smoothly as possible. Let's move Stella out of the way a little bit. Now, I don't know, can we even see this really on air? Yeah, we can. Super. Okay, what do you guys think? I'm just so fond of straight line quilting. I just think it does an amazing job of giving that quilty texture, but not stealing the show, you know? That's what I like. This was my thread break. Let's just trim those tails. Okay, do you have any questions, comments? Let me grab my coffee cup. I've even had it on the warmer today. Can you imagine? Okay, Barb, curious about what you do with the extra cuddle you'll have on the sides of the backing when you trim the quilt. Oh, Barb, this is always a conundrum. I don't want to waste it, so at this point, I have a little tub that I've saved, and the idea in my head is that someday I'll do kids' quilts that have, you know, maybe 6 or 7 inch blocks, and I'll intersperse, you know, maybe a diagonal row of blue and a diagonal row of silver among fabrics, and just have this interesting multi-textured quilt. Have I done that? No, but that's my idea. Oh, Dave is saying make him a travel pillow. Maybe. Tony, could you clamp using those hangers for trousers with the wooden bars that clamp straight across that gives you at least 12 inches of even tension and would accommodate cuddle fabric? I absolutely could. That's a super suggestion, Tony. I don't happen to own any, and I choose not to for the very few relatively quilts that I do with cuddle. I choose to just make do with the edge ones that I've got. But yes, you absolutely could. Donna, I've never had the isocord shred like that. What do you think caused it? This is such an ongoing question, Donna. I don't have a perfect answer, but what I think causes it is when you're stitching from right to left, your thread is twisted. It's got a ply in it. It's twisted, right? And it untwists, basically, and some of those fibers break. Now, why sometimes it untwists so badly that it shreds and sometimes it doesn't, I don't know, because now it's doing fine. But that first one, you could see the thread just pulled up like a massively twisted piece of string, right? Because it was twisted in the wrong direction. I don't know. I've seen people flip their cone upside down, right? To make that twist the opposite way. I've seen people put their cones on a horizontal spool holder so it pulls off like this instead of pulls off like this, all to control that twist and shred. It's an ongoing thing, and I don't have a perfect answer for you. Victoria, how many stitches per inch are you stitching at? I have 9 on right now. 10 is my more usual norm. 9 is a bit longer than I sometimes have, but again, it's just, every little bit helps. There's like 12 fewer stitches across the quilt, right? When I'm going right to left to risk that shredding. That's my thought. Noella, are these lines going to be vertical or horizontal? They're going to be horizontal. I loaded the top of my quilt at the top edge today. They're going to be horizontal in the finished quilt. Wendy, on the Michael Quilts YouTube channel, he has a video to make DIY side leaders with canvas. I used a drop cloth that you pin to the quilt. Concept is to evenly distribute the pull. Very cost effective. Yep, super solution. Some of you may want to try that. I absolutely could. I haven't gone that far because I've been getting good results, but absolutely, that's a great solution too. Quilters are so inventive, honestly. Barbara, are there any things that we can prepare or you would recommend for the quilt cruise to make our experience the best it can be? Honestly, I don't think so. We're going to have a book that we give each of you that has notes and doodle sheets and places for you to take notes, hard enough to sit on your lap and write on, and you get to take it home with you. So all of that is provided. You might want additional doodle paper just to be practicing what we're doing. So like inexpensive craft paper that's just not lined, perhaps. Oh, Mr. Producer is saying suntan lotion, but I bet you knew that already. We won't know what to do with ourselves in January coming from the Pacific Northwest to the Caribbean. We won't know what to do. Lori, to keep things smooth, do you always hold your hand behind your needle or are there times when you put it in the front? I mostly go behind because usually the goal is to pull what's in front under the needle a little bit faster. So if I put my hand in front, it would prevent it going under the needle faster and would in fact cause problems. Does that make sense? So that's why my hand is behind. Nita, if the thread shreds more than once, I find changing to a new needle, adjust its insertion position, seems to stop the shredding. This is a common solution that I hear among long armors is that, you put your needle in at 6:30 on the clock, for example, and you can adjust it just a hair one way or another, can help with that shredding. It, has to do with the needle timing and all of that. On my Bernina, because it has sewing machine needles, they're flat back. And so I can't, and I don't need to adjust that. So thankfully my machine does well without it. But most long arms do have a round shank needle, and so you can make that little adjustment if you want to. Wilma, love, love, love. I've been working on a quilt with continuous curves. So fun to quilt with you. Awesome. I'm so glad you're here, Wilma. This is great. Okay. Let's advance this baby. So again, I'm quilting Crimson Christmas by Krista Moser. I'm going to move Stella away from my red snappers because it makes it easier to advance. If you scroll back through the chat, Dave has been putting links in there for the pattern. There's also one in the description below the show. So you can find the link there for her pattern. It is brand new this season, 2024 for Christmas. And now you're starting to see my lighter one. It really looks red still on camera. It's quite pinkish tones in real life. So when I advance, I always tug batting and quilt alike to make sure they're tugged down smooth. In the case of this quilt, all the edges are bias. So it's really important. I did not run a basting stitch around the edge. I could have, but it's really important that I keep that pulled up and not overly stretched. So I think I'm going to drop in a couple pins actually to make sure that that is secure. And I'm watching my front edge, which is floating down here in front of me. I'm watching to make sure I'm not getting any frowniness going on in my quilt, right? Here's a comment I've got to see apparently. Sylvia, Valentine's Day is coming. Dave deserves a red cuddle travel pillow. He is totally agreeing with you.
Who am I to argue?
This side's not as bad. The other side does have a little bit of stretch in it that's visible. So we're just going to make sure to get that pulled up into place, basted in place. All those pins are just a safeguard. I'm going to take my channel lock off while I do this. I keep calling it a channel lock. It's just engaged belts on this machine. And again, I'm pulling behind my needle, pulling it under the needle a little bit faster. Or pulling with my thumbnail, which I'm doing here. Any of those things work just to get that little bit of ease that I need to take up. Pulled in stitch by stitch by stitch. And yes, I'm going right over the pins. I'm stitching very slowly. This time I will remember my side clamps early on. That's usually my system. Baste clamp. Move on. After that, I have another little straight line trick for you. Quick recap of the show here. My live and unscripted show is always me working on an actual quilt, often a client quilt. So it's not a lesson per se, it's just the big picture. Loading a quilt, planning some stuff, making some decisions, dealing with some challenges, all those things. If you are enjoying this show, I encourage you, hit the like button, subscribe, and even click the notification bell. Had a few people asking me they missed the live sewing sessions that I did quite impromptu earlier this week, so the only solution I've got to offer is click that notification bell and then YouTube will ping you when I am on. Okay, I have one more trick to show you. It's important to try to get our horizontal lines matched up with the lines we placed earlier. And inevitably, no matter how hard I've tried, there will have been some fabric shifting as I've advanced the quilt. So my first gauge is to look at some lines. You can't quite see it, but I've got a dead bar, a leveler bar at the back, and I can see my stitching line running along that. And it actually looks pretty nice and straight, but just as one more foolproof measure, I've engaged my belt again, and I'm going to match my needle up, right up with my last line of stitching. And I'm literally going to run across the quilt and check my needle against that line of stitching. And I'm off almost 1/8 of an inch right in the middle. So I'm literally going to take my magnets, watch this, and do a bit of a tug, just like that. I don't know if you could even see that motion, but I just pulled a little. And now if I check that needle, oh, that's much closer. A little bit more tug. And I'm just using the fact that the material is shifty in my favor to shift it to where I want it to be. The further apart your lines are, the less this matters. The closer your lines are together, the more you'll see. Kind of makes sense, doesn't it? The more you'll see a 1/16 of an inch of difference. And another thing I sometimes do is literally nudge my roll. If I need to pull the edges up a little bit, it doesn't take very much. Just a little tug on that. And I'm going to do that at both ends because it's both ends that were a little looser. Tug firmly in the middle and do one last check. This end is still pulling down. So I'm just using the quality, the stretchy quality of my fabric to make it do what I need it to do. I'm pretty happy with that. Okay. Take our basting stitch off, back to stitching. Here we go. Now we'll see how we did. Looking fine, looking very fine. have a 24-inch machine, so it's a fairly deep throat space. I'm on tiptoe right now. Often when I do these straight lines, I will not do a full advance because it's much easier to see it and to keep things straight if it's not at arm's length. I'm so pleased with how this is looking. So pleased. A few of these red fabrics I'll point out as we work our way back across. Some of them were given to me as a bundle of scraps by a friend, and they have to be 20 years old. They have to be. She had them for years. I've had them for a few years, which to me is fun. This one is one, and this print one down here is another. This is one of mine. I've had that for quite a while too. You may recognize that print. It's available in a lot of colors, and for good reason. It's an awesome blender. And of course, grunge. Can't go wrong with grunge. This is another one I've had for forever. So I did have to fudge my my planning a little bit. Krista, for example, asks for 2 dark reds, and I think I have 4 different dark reds, so I didn't have enough of any one of them. There's a thick seam right there. Anyway, that's the beauty, to me, of a scrappy quilt. And also, I love the fact that nobody else will have a quilt exactly like mine. Because I used my fabrics, I'm not able to identify them all for you because they're so old, but because I used those scrappy things, my quilt will look like nobody else's. I feel like I'm getting a bit wide in my lines. I don't know if that's the case or not. And here too. In my piecing sessions, I was talking about it. I consider myself a pretty careful piecer, but I don't think I could call myself meticulous. So, you know, some of my points are not perfect matchups, especially after I had big blocks sewn together and then I was sewing the long strips. You know, not all of them perfectly intersected, but they're satisfactory for me. I deliberated a little bit about what color thread to sew with too. So definitely when I was piecing the white poinsettias, I had on a stone kind of colored thread. I think it's called putty actually, that worked with the grayish white, the creamy white, etc. And then on a lot of the rest of the quilt, the reds, the greens, and the charcoals, I used a charcoal thread. But then when I went to sew those areas together, I just picked whatever I had on my machine last, and it seems to be okay. So obviously where you're sewing the white to the charcoal, you just gotta pick one. Oh, that must be a place where I undid some stitching, because look, there's a little tail hanging out there. We won't pull it, we'll trim it. We know better than to pull a stitching thread. In Krista's pattern, she suggests that you get these outer points to be mirror images of each other. And when we go back, I'll show you how some of mine did not end up that way. Again, that's because I had more dark reds than just two. And so I didn't have enough of each one to manage that matching that she suggested. And I just embraced it. That's just the nature of my quilt. So this is one that matches here. And this is one that does not match. Yesterday I sent out a newsletter. If you're not on my newsletter list, you might want to, because I am a bit of a storyteller in my newsletters. But yesterday's I opened with, "Oof, my butt hurts." And the story was, I've been doing a workout program. Today was day 28 on this program. I'm doing something every day. And it's based on, the lady who's teaching it was a ballerina. So it's based on dance moves and strength and flexibility and gracefulness. But one of the things that she says, and this is the point I was making in my newsletter, she says over and over and over again that so often when we're doing workouts, we do quick, fast repetitions because it's easier. It is literally harder and takes more strength to do slow and controlled and graceful movements. And I see that in quilting. I'm thinking of it today because I'm quilting fairly slowly with these straight lines, not because they're hard to control, the machine is kind of controlling them, but because I have less problems with thread shredding or with, I just have less problems when I go a little bit slower than when I do everything at top speed. But I certainly think that is true when you're quilting free motion. For you to slow down enough to have control is harder. It's harder to control a swirl if you're not whooshing around it, but it's better. It shows more strength and more literally control of your machine. So that's what I learned from my workouts this week as it relates to quilting. I also definitely learned how a whole range of muscles can all be sore at the same time. I think I put a link to the workouts in my newsletter. It's called Bar Definition, B-A-R-R-E. And it's an app, and I have really, really enjoyed it. I love the lady that's teaching. I just like how she presents and how she teaches and encourages. And in 28 days, I have seen an appreciable difference in stretches that I'm able to do. I think that's amazing, that in 4 weeks I can actually feel a difference. So I'm keeping on. I'm sure there's a quilting lesson in that too. Just keep going. 1 week may not show you massive improvement, but a month, 6 months, a year of consistent doing of the thing will definitely make it better. So that's your pep talk for today. And yeah, if you're not signed up for my newsletter and you want to be, maybe Dave will get a link put in, but if not, the easiest way is just go to my website, stitchedbysusan.com, and in a few seconds you'll get a little pop-up that invites you to, I think it offers you a freebie, but that's exactly what it does, is signs you up for my newsletter. So in that, I do tell these stories and teach these little lessons, but also that's where I let you know when sessions like this are coming up. Yeah. And I wanted to mention too, today's sponsor is Stitch House of Richardson, Texas. I'll be teaching there this coming week, the 14th and 15th of November. And it will be fairly basic long arm things, but it will be, the one day particularly, will be exactly like one of these live and unscripted shows, only doing it in front of a live audience. So if you're able to come in person, that would be great. I'd love to meet you there. If you're not able to come in person, tune in. Just know that it'll be a live and unscripted show like this, but not aired from my studio. It'll be aired from their shop. Dave's put a link for their store in the chat. Certainly you can look at their calendar of events and find out exactly what time the classes are and that sort of thing there. It's going to be a good time. I've been collaborating off and on over this whole year with Stitch House, and I've been there, I think 3 times already this year, teaching various classes. And this was just an act of generosity on their part. They provided me with a sewing table, which you can see in the live episodes that I was doing, stitching this quilt, piecing this quilt. And it's by Horn of America, and it's for my sewing machine, and it raises up and down so that I can have it raised up and stand to sew, which I absolutely love. I've never had a table before that did that, and I am so in love with it. It's so much easier for me to stand on my feet, to be able to move to my ironing board, and I feel so much more comfortable not sitting all the time to sew. It is fabulous. And of course it has bells and whistles and all the fun things, but that's my favorite feature. I can raise it up and stand to sew. And here we are at the end of this pass. So again, like before, I am going to break thread and completely disconnect my machine in order to advance this quilt. And I do that when I'm stitching straight lines so that the needle down, I don't want it to distort or stretch these lines at all. I want to keep them as straight as I possibly can as I'm advancing the quilt. Now you guys can be chiming into how much of this you would like to see. One more pass is not going to quite do it. There's about 1.5. So I'm not going to do this one super deep, because here's the end of our quilt right here, right? So I'm willing to stay on air and totally finish it. If you guys want to stay, it would be awfully fun to be able to dismount it and have a look at the whole thing finished, wouldn't it? Let me just take my channel lock off while I do my basting. If I can reach it. Oof. Great time for any questions or comments. I'll just quickly drop in these basting lines. This time I didn't need to pin. It didn't seem to be as stretched out as that last one was. Of course, there's fewer seams along this edge. So if you're piecing a quilt like this, and if those bias edges make you uncomfortable, just take a second before you load it on the long arm and run what we quilters like to call the victory lap. Just run a line of stitching about 1/8 inch from the edge all the way around the quilt, and that just keeps it from stretching out. And if you're sending it off to another long armer, I know they would appreciate that. See, it's this side here that has all the little bitty seams. I'll move, see that? And that just adds to the sort of complexity. So again, I'll just grab a couple pins and drop them in just to keep myself on track. I'm seeing the front lower edge of my quilt. That's helping me keep it nice and straight so that I know when I get to the bottom I will have a straight edge. Few of these fabrics, particularly in this lighter block, came from Quilting Mayhem in Snohomish. I was there a couple of weeks ago, and while I was there is when this pattern was released, or when I saw it, and I purchased the pattern, and so then I quickly invested in a couple of red fabrics, knowing I was going to be making it, and knowing I didn't have many of the light fabrics in my stash, the light reds. So yeah, a couple of the ones that are in this particular flower, this plaid one I'm on, this ring one, and this one, all of those came from Quilting Mayhem. Could I tell you which lines of fabric they are? No, I could not do that. That's where I acquired them. Mr. Producer's chuckling. Someone's telling him funny stories.
No, I asked in the poll, should we stay and finish or let me go finish the laundry and yard work? So far, we're 12% are saying they want to finish the laundry and do yard work. I want to know who the 12% are so they can come here and visit.
I just don't want to forget, so I'm going to quickly do my lining up here. Got my channel lock back on. Lining up my needle with that row of stitching, moving across the quilt, checking it, every 12 inches or so. Yeah, exactly the same thing as before. The edges are just a little bit looser, so this middle needs a wee tug. And we are talking small. We're talking 1/8 of an inch. I don't want to be stretching the quilt into submission. I just want to encourage it. Looking good, you guys. Wow. That's pretty spectacular, that one. Okay. Got my side clamps on, got my basting done. It's all good. Gonna grab me a sip of coffee and answer some questions. Move Stella off to the side. I'm so pleased with how this is turning out. Okay, so here's the funny story, the backstory. You want to put the front camera on? Here's the backstory. Mr. Producer's been asking. He did a little poll. You know, who would like to see the rest of the quilt finished, and who would like to see, us go so that he can finish the yard work and the dishes and cooking dinner and all the things. What? So just a minute. Oh, it's do you guys want to see the rest of the quilt, or you go on to more important things, and only like less than 10% want to go do the more important things. So he's saying we would like the 10% to come visit, please, and do ours. Wouldn't we? Actually, I have no complaints. We currently actually live in a rental property, in like a subdivision of rentals, and so the yard work is all done as part of it. So all I have is my pots. That's all I've got to take care of. It's lovely. Coming from a person who's always had an acreage and lawn to mow and leaves to rake is a treat. Okay, Nancy, are you using a regular needle on the cuddle? Yes, what I have on specifically is a top stitch needle. So that is a sharp needle and it has a long eye. That's just my current favorite that I use for everything. And it works really, really well. Noreen, how do I get a quilt to you to use on the show? Best way, Noreen, is email me and we'll talk, okay? Susan at stitchedbysusan.com. I am accepting quilts, but only edge to edge work. So just know that before you reach out to me. Yeah. Donna, how do you decide what quilt to use straight line quilting on? Just my preference, Donna. In the case of this one, while I was piecing, I was already thinking about what did I want to quilt on it, but often I'll wait till the quilt is finished and how does it strike me? Does it need something floral on it? Does it need something like chrysanthemums that's all even texture? But often a quilt that is a statement piece, like this one is, straight lines are so good because they just take a back row seat, and I love that. I just love that. So, Nita, Susan, how'd your Hexie quilt do at the Spokane Quilt Show? Well, it hung, Nita. It did not win any ribbons, which didn't fully surprise me. It was not intricately quilted or anything like that. I just wanted it to have the opportunity to hang. So those of you who might not have remembered that story, over the course of this summer, I purchased a hand-pieced Hexie quilt top. And it was made by a lady in Honduras and through an organization called One Common Thread. And they help these ladies, get supplies from the U.S. Scraps are donated, and these ladies piece quilt tops and sometimes make finished products. And then, they get sold in various ways, and it helps to earn them a living. So I purchased this quilt top, and in 2 episodes, I did the quilting of it on air. And then I enrolled it. That's not the word I want. I entered it in our local quilt show, which was just a couple of weekends ago. So it got to hang at the quilt show, and lots of people got to see it. And I had a little card with the story on it. So that was really fun to kind of give that some visibility. And it certainly held its own. Like that wreath of Hexies floral Hexies was just absolutely gorgeous. It was very, very pretty. Long answer. Wilma, I read the newsletter, and while working on the curves, I went slow, and only when I got on that last right to left did I have any shredding. My curves have improved too. Good news. It does work. It just works to slow down enough to be in control. That's what improves your quilting. It works, I promise. And love your tips. Your tips on thread saved me a lot of frustration when my top thread kept breaking. My machine doesn't like Aurifil 40 weight. So interesting how machines seem to have preferences. And I know they're mechanical, they don't really, but whatever their settings or engineering is, there definitely is that feeling that certain machines prefer certain things. Mine does love Isacord. That's one of the first quilting threads I ever used, and I've been able to use it through, this is my third quilting machine. They've all loved it, and it has served me super, super well. 100% poly threads for sure are my favorites. Is that it for questions? Okay. Nita's asking, Dave, do we need to sign up for the Richardson event for virtual viewing? So in other words, you mean viewing long distance, like YouTube. You don't need to sign up for that. No, it will literally be public on my YouTube channel, just like this one is. I won't even make it unlisted like I did today. It will literally be public. And over the course, like Monday or Tuesday of this week, we'll be setting that up. So you'll be able to see the link and the time that it's airing in your local time zone. So watch for that. And Dave is saying the times of the classes are in the chat too. Just read carefully, because of course I'll be in Texas. So on their calendar and probably Dave's times in the chats, you know, that's in the Texas time zone. I'm in the Pacific time zone. So if you look on my YouTube channel, that should give you what it is in your time zone or whatever your device is, if that makes sense. Just read carefully. That's all I can say. Don't get confused there. Chances are it'll air a similar time to what we do here though, 9 a.m. Pacific. Michelle, I'm coming in late here. It doesn't look like you had channel locks on. How do you stay so straight? I do, in fact, Michelle. I have the Q-matic system on my Bernina, which is not channel locks, but is engaging the belts. So I do have the belt engaged that keeps the horizontal line straight. My Bernina has a glide feature, which means I can still move it. So that's how I'm adjusting to the next line. There's resistance there, but I can still move it. That's just a Bernina feature. You're able to do that even when the lock is on.
Is there a response to the poll question?
This is about the poll question, apparently. That is a silly question to ask a quilter. I agree. Would you rather quilt or would you rather cook? A while back, I saw a little post and I kind of rechanged it and posted with my thinking in mind, and it was sort of like, if you stay in the quilting room long enough, they'll just eat cereal for dinner. Like and follow for more recipes. That just suited me to a T. Love that. Okay, back to quilting, you guys. So yes, I do have my channel lock on to keep me in a straight line from side to side, horizontal line. You can kind of see when I pull it, there is that resistance. It pulls hard, but it does pull, and it's meant to do that. That's the glide feature. My left hand that I'm running here, I'm actually putting some weight onto the part that's already been stitched, and that pulls what is yet to be stitched under the needle and keeps it from pushing out in front and making ripples. If you've ever quilted parallel lines on a sit-down machine or a long arm, you know that's what fabric wants to do, is make a little bit of twist. So this one's wanting to push a little bit that way, and the next one wants to push a little bit this way. That weight keeps that from happening and keeps your fabric beautifully smooth with none of that twisting in it. My bobbin is close to empty, you guys. I can hear it rattling like crazy in there, so I'm actually going to stop and change it, because I don't love having a bobbin splice necessarily in the middle of a straight line. It's right here. We're just going to stop and change it. That is a Bernina feature that they don't talk about at the sales shows, but so many quilters say it. Our bobbins, they're metal and they rattle when they're getting empty or when you need to oil. Yeah, look at that. See? Almost empty. in response to my goofy little recipe post. Leslie is saying, worst case scenario, they learn how to cook. I'm agreeing. And I felt like there was a thread in the bottom there, so I'm just looking, but no, it looks good. But I'm going to take a moment and oil quick. Drop of oil. Yeah, it is a bit silly to ask a quilter if she'd rather do yard work or laundry. Silly, silly, silly. Another one of my favorites that's been around for forever is when I make a quilt, it stays made. Unlike, you know, when I sweep the floor or do a load of laundry. Because that is the truth of it. And I'm quilting today with my ruler foot on. That just is, I commonly just leave it on. So you could also do a darning foot or whatever you liked. But I want to make one point here. I talked earlier, and I talk often about knowing the sound and the feel of your machine. You guys don't see me very often doing tension checks or, looking at the underside of my quilt. But it's not because I just ignore it and quilt willy-nilly. It's because I'm very attuned to the sound and feel. So I noticed when I pulled up my bobbin thread, it did not feel quite right. And I don't know how to describe that to you, but there was the tiniest bit of a catch. If my thread was not in my bobbin correctly, it would feel different also. And I would know that if I had not inserted it into the tension correctly. I would know that just by the feel of it. And so it's sometimes I don't talk about it as I'm doing it, but these are the things I do almost without thinking. Right here, I'm going to pull up that bobbin thread and I'm pulling a little bit of it. And I know what that pull should feel like exactly. And if it doesn't feel right, then I would know the tension's off. Does that make sense? So that's kind of a thing you just learn to do. That's what experience brings you. And if you don't know that feel, then you might want to do a little tension test every time you change your bobbin. You might want to crawl under your quilt or hold a mirror under it to see what it's doing underneath. You certainly don't want ugly surprises. I just wanted to assure you that I don't just ignore those things, but I'm pretty finely attuned to what my machine ought to sound and feel like. For those of you who may be just tuning in, I am quilting on I always get tongue twisted. Crimson Christmas by Krista Moser of the Quilted Life. It's a brand new pattern, just came out for this Christmas season. It has Krista's signature 60-degree angles all over it. But don't let that deter you. Krista is an excellent pattern writer. She has a great knack for laying things out step by step. There's a lot of pictures in her patterns. Honestly, if you just follow it bit by bit, you'll get there. I love her patterns. I've made many of them. I chose to use a certain amount of scrappy fabrics out of my stash, so my coloring is not identical to her original pattern. That was just my choice. And if you want to see it being pieced or see parts of it being pieced, I did 2 live episodes in late October and early November where I was piecing this quilt. So you can see some of the fabrics up close. Now I'm quilting it, and by golly, we're going to have it on the couch or on the wall in time for Christmas. I'm using Isocord 100% poly thread in a 40 weight to quilt. And I think the color was 3971. Anyway, it's a soft gray, lighter than medium gray. I took a little cuddle of thread, you know, and spread it across all the fabrics, and this was the one I liked best. It's considerably lighter than the dark fabrics and somewhat darker than the white. It shows up a little bit on everything. And I chose straight line quilting because I always think it is such a good foil for a quilt that is a bit of a statement piece. The straight line quilting, you know, it doesn't argue with or fight with the quilt. It's quite content to take a supporting role, and I love that about it. I do have my belt engaged that's keeping me in lovely straight horizontal lines. At the top of the quilt, I did have a ruler, a little mark on it for measuring the spacing of my lines, but after I had done a few, then I started just winging it. It's just my own personal preference. But they are about a ½ inch, maybe a hair shy of ½ inch apart. Dragging my hand on the quilt on what's being stitched. I'm doing that with a little bit of weight, and that is to pull this upcoming fabric under the needle a little faster and not allow it to push out in front. That is my biggest and best tip for you when doing straight line quilting at a long arm. If you don't do that, you're apt to have that slightly rippled effect of one, you know, your left facing line pushing one direction and then your right facing line pushing the other direction. And if you're quilting them all in the same direction, you're apt to get a twisted quilt, right? If you start every line going from left to right, you're apt to have a quilt that really twists out of shape. But doing this weighting and pulling it under the needle really eliminates that problem. I'm putting a couple pounds of pressure on it. I'm not just resting my hand, I'm actually pushing a little. I'm quilting on a Bernina Q24. Her name is Stella, and she's pretty happy by and large to quilt right to left, left to right, and I'm so grateful because I love straight line quilting. It's a thing I do frequently. And I currently have a ruler foot on. That's just kind of my standard foot. That or the darning foot. Either works. But there's no particular overwhelming reason to have a ruler foot. It's just what I had on yesterday, and I didn't change it. And I'm using Isocord 100% poly thread in a 40 weight, a silvery color. And for needle, I've got a 9014 on and a top stitch. A chrome top stitch needle is what I typically use. I had a sewer recommend that to me. Now, she makes quilts too, but sewing is her main thing. And I was having trouble with thread breakage and things, and I went to her. She's in her 80s, and so she's got a lot of experience. And I said, Anna, like, what can I do? I'm having trouble with thread breaking. And she suggested a top stitch needle. And what's different about it is that it has a quite long eye, and so there's a bit less resistance on the thread, just a little bit less friction. And it has served me well, so that's kind of my go-to needle. And I do like the 9014 size. A lot of long arms and a lot of shops and reps will recommend a more robust needle, but this serves me really, really well. I don't like having giant needle punctures in my quilt, so the finest needle that works well, I'm happy with, and that has turned out to be a 9014 for me. One of the features of Bernina, I think it's the only long arm that offers it, is that they do use regular sewing machine needles. So it's the same needle that I can use on my sewing machine. And in fact, the same feet. Any of the spring-loaded feet are interchangeable between my long arm and my Bernina sewing machine as well, which is kind of cool. The weight of my hand also helps to prevent this type of pleating happening at the edge. It wants to happen. It sort of naturally will happen if you don't take measures against it. And running the weight of your hand is what keeps that in place. Keeps the fabric feeding smoothly under the needle without being pushed or pulled. Right here, can you see there's that little bit of fullness going on there? Also that red fuzz. That I don't want to just let happen, or I'm going to get ripples there. So I'm actually adding more pressure to pull that white under the needle. These are the things that I do that maybe don't show up on camera, but if I talk about them, I bet you can kind of pick out what I'm doing. It accumulates. It makes a difference. I always say a quilt is a cumulative thing. Like, it starts right from the cutting and the sewing and the pressing. But even when you're at the long arm, getting a square result is cumulative. It's how you load, how you baste, how you handle the advances. All those add up. If you have a problem, it can really add up too. Your management of it is cumulative. One more. Okay, we have one last advance. And again, whenever I'm advancing on regular edge-to-edge quilting, I just put my needle down and roll everything up. But when I'm doing straight line quilting, I do take my needle out, break thread, so the quilt is not connected to anything, so that I don't distort those lines at all. We're done with the magnets. I'm going to put them against the wall behind me so I don't stub my toe on them. And there's the end of our quilt. Look at us go. Here's a quick tip for you guys. You can almost see my hand here. There's a fair bit of, can we just have a wide angle view, Dave? Will it show better for a second? I'll just put a handy little tip in here for you guys, because I'm all about tips. See how there's a bit of sag here? Chiefly because I've got so much backing extending beyond my batting. So my batting is plumping up the roll here, but where the batting ends, then I've got this loose floppy bit. There's an easy fix. You literally grab the last layer of it on your bar. You can almost see it. And I tug on it until this edge pulls straight. And then I literally just sweep that under the bar and tuck it into the tight roll. And it holds this nice and straight. And that works with any fabric. It makes it so much easier to keep this edge of the quilt beautifully straight. Okay, now we got some basting to do. This time I'm going to put, I think just my horizontal line's good enough. I do want to be sure to get a straight edge on the bottom of this quilt. I want my quilting lines to line up with my basting line. So let's see how well we did. Keeping the whole thing straight. This is where the proof is in the pudding right here. I'm just going to step back and look at it and see if there's any places I need to adjust. It's looking a little short right at this end, so I'm just going to stay right at about 1/4 inch here, so I've got a wee bit of wiggle room. And by the way, at least this way it's not very easy with straight lines to pull in ease, but this way it's easier. So my green area right here is hanging a bit long. I'm literally going to push it up, and I'm going to ease that into my lines as I quilt them. I can ease that all in. I don't have to cut it off the bottom. A little more. And I mentioned earlier, this quilt is all angles, all bias edges, so not very many horizontal seams. It was kind of difficult during the process of quilting to be judging the straightness of those seams, because I just didn't have very many to gauge by. So I do have a little, probably a good 1/4 inch of excess right there in that green area, but I'm going to ease that in, so no biggie. So my seam lines will still cut off quite nicely on the bottom here. My points, I won't snip off any points. At least I'll try not to. I'm trying also to pull it under the needle quicker. It's wanting to push ahead of me, right? And I can't let it do that, so just go slow. Take your time. My arm, my wrist, I'm using all the things to put a little weight, put a little tension on it, keep it under control. It really seems like that left corner was just a hair short. I've had excess all the way along. But I don't think I'll have any trouble easing that in. It's not tons. And nicely in the corner. And now I'm pulling with my fingernail. I'm pulling a little bit of excess under with every stitch. But you'll see that will just get eaten up in my straight lines and in the puffiness of the batting. And honestly, yeah, I do still want to break thread. I want to check the straightness of that upper line. Probably should have done that before I did the basting, but I'm going to do it now. So I'm just touching my needle down on my last line of stitching, looking across the quilt. Is that needle line still lining up within a couple threads worth? Because my lines are a 1/2 inch of spacing, it doesn't have to be exactly, but pretty close, pretty close. I think we're good. So now, this little bit of excess that is in here, and basically from here to here, there is some. I'm just going to distribute it as best I can and make sure a little bit of it is taken up in each line that I quilt, and it's going to look totally fine when it's all said and done. We're off of basting stitch. We're good to go. Do we have any questions, by the way, Mr. Producer, before I... Okay, we'll save those. I'll go ahead and finish quilting, and then we'll talk while I unload. I'm just really watching that fullness level. I don't want to get too much in any one line, or that's really going to show up. I did get a little bit of rippling and twisting going on in that one line, but again, pretty minor. Looked at over the course of the whole quilt. Slow down a little bit, put a little more pressure on it. See if I can do better on the next line. And the goal is to just pull up a little bit of that fullness with each and every line. Again, it's cumulative. Thick seam. This entire white poinsettia right here, I must have had, you know, that was probably one day's stitching, and I was just a little shy on my seam allowances, right? It's just this one white poinsettia is where I'm seeing this little bit of excess that I've got to ease in. It's so difficult to make a minute adjustment. And if at any point I thought I couldn't ease all that fullness in, I certainly could just quickly undo that basting stitch on the bottom and let it be trimmed off the bottom. That is not the end of the world with this particular pattern. However, I think I can ease it all in. So one last time before we finished, I will be at Stitch House in Richland, Texas this coming week, doing a live and unscripted episode literally in front of a live audience, airing from their store. So it will be on my YouTube channel as it usually is, so those of you who don't live local to Stitch House can still see it, can still view it. Unknown yet what the project, or undetermined what the project will be, but I will be sending out a newsletter early this coming week with more details on that, exactly what time it will be, and I'll have the episode scheduled on YouTube so you can find it there. So it will be just like this live and unscripted show in the sense that I'll be loading a client quilt right from start to finish. The loading, the thought processes about what batting to choose, what thread to choose, etc., and quilting it there before your very eyes. So those in the live audience will certainly get first kick at the can for the questions, but we'll try and answer the on-air questions as well. So that's November 14 and 15. This is a first. This is a first for us and for them. So we're going to try and air live material both days, but I'm not going to make promises till we get there, but for sure the Friday. Mr. Producer is going with me, because how could I do this without him? So that's going to be a fun experience doing a live show. Really, really live show. I know Dave has put Stitch House's links in the chat, but feel free to check their schedule of events if you're anywhere nearby and are interested in coming and catching a live show. As far as I know, there are still openings available. So check that out if you want to be there in person. You see how it's all coming together? That little bit of excess is just easing its way in a little bit between every row of stitching. If I get really ambitious, I will get this bound over the weekend so I can take it with me to Texas. Wouldn't that be fun? A little bit of fullness there, but again, that's just going to be hidden as soon as it's relaxed off the long arm. No one will be any the wiser. Beautiful! We're done! We've done a whole quilt this morning. Look at us go. Okay, I will take all the clamps off. If you have any more questions or comments, now is the moment for them. Brief recap. I have been quilting Crimson Christmas. Want to do a front camera again, hon? Or you want the side one so they can see the quilt? Let's do front for a second. I've been quilting Crimson Christmas by Krista Moser of the Quilted Life. It's a quilt that I pieced or did part of the piecing in a couple live episodes in late October and early November. And then this was the quilting of the whole project. It is a sweetheart of a quilt, and I quilted it with simple, straight lines. I used 100% poly thread. Isocord is the brand I used today in a soft silver color. I have red cuddle on the back of the quilt, and I think I'll go ahead and unload it, and then we'll keep talking. If you guys have any questions or comments, I'm happy to take them before we close up shop for the day. So I'm just walking along now. I do this at the end of every quilt. I roll my leader up over the rail and attach it with my side clamps at both ends. You can't really see me doing that, but that just keeps my leader in place, ready to load the next quilt. You see that? And now it will stay here and will not flop off because I've got it attached at the both ends. That's just a tiny, simple thing that I do as a matter of course when I take one quilt off, so I'm ready for the next one. Look at that pretty red cuddle. Yum, yum, yum. All right. Maybe if I just spread it over, we can have a look at it, perhaps. Let's see if that works. Oof! That gives you a pretty good view. So I'm actually standing at the bottom edge of the quilt. Isn't that gorgeous? Oh man, I love straight line quilting. I just love it, love it, love it, love everything about it. I will do my best to get some pictures taken and get them uploaded within the next couple of days onto social media so that you can have a look at some of the close-up details of this. It is so sweet. I love it. There's the straight line quilting on the back, and I think it was Debbie that mentioned, because of the nap, you can't even see, you literally can't, even if you try, see that I have gray thread on the back. It just is totally absorbed into that nap and looks lovely. Isn't that sweet? Yum, yum. Okay, let me grab my last couple sips of coffee and we'll chat about it.
Okay. Comments.
Don't you love my little plaid mug? And this looks like a good way to learn manual mode on your machine. I use regulated all the time because I can't keep my stitches even. I tend to use regulated when I'm doing straight line stitching too. But you're absolutely right. You could, because it would be, that's the only thing you'd have to think about was evenness of movement. So sure, anytime's a good time to learn about manual stitching.
I think you answered this by holding it up. But
What color cuddle are you using? Absolutely stunning. Well, red. Yes, you saw that now. And cuddle does not come in tons and tons of different colors, but what cuddle does that I love is it comes 90 inches wide, so you don't need any seam in it. So I just picked a nice Christmassy red and went with it. Judy, what was the spacing of your lines again, please? I was aiming for just under 1/2 inch. I think honestly they're almost spot on 1/2 inch. Totally a matter of personal preference. If you do them 1/4 inch, it's going to take a long time to quilt. And I don't love great big lines because you get puffy between them, but that's just my personal preference. 1/2 or a little under is what I love. Terry, do you not use your weights with the cuddle backing? Do you mean my magnets on the front? I did have those on earlier, or do you mean the side clamps, Terry? Maybe clarify that question if you would. Jean or Jeannie, I might have missed it, but do you have any suggestions on how to get straight lines when you don't have channel locks and I can't use clamps? Thank you for all you do. Rulers is an option. That's the most foolproof option then, is to go with rulers. I'm curious why you can't use clamps, or if there's something else. Like there are other long arm brands which have, for example, some kind of rubberized C's that you can slip literally over the wheels of your quilting machine on the frame. Like, is that something you could look into? I think Handy Quilter has those. APQS might have those. And there's different styles of clamps too. So I explore a little bit. Maybe honestly ask in Facebook groups where there's a lot of quilters what other people have found that works with whatever brand of machine you've got. Barb, what will the binding be? I think it's going to be the charcoal. I think so. I don't have enough of any of the reds that I used in order to do a red binding, or I might have considered doing that, but I just don't have enough of them. So I think it's going to end up being the charcoal. Terry's saying the weights on the front. So that would be the clamps. I'll just get one up to show you like this. And I absolutely did use those as I was progressing through the quilt, just not on the very last pass because then I had it basted so it couldn't move. But while my front is floating as I'm doing my advances, I did absolutely use them. Victoria Eagle, have you ever quilted a pixel quilt? I've pieced a pixel top with a 3/4 inch pixel size. I'm so impressed. Learning to quilt it with leaning to quilt it with straight lines. What should be the distance between the lines in your opinion? I do think straight lines is an awesome option because again, you want people to see that pixelated picture. You don't want them to be distracted by quilting of, say, flowers or leaves or baseball bats, right? Again, this is my favorite. 1/2 inch or a little under is my personal favorite. It's not so fine that it takes forever and a day, and it's not so big that you end up with puffy windrows, right? It keeps the quilt flat. So between 3/8 and 1/2 really, I think, is an ideal spacing. That's about what's in the quilt behind me too. Susan Berry, is there a quilt pattern you would not use straight lines? Oh gosh. I mean, there's lots of times when I use other things, Susan. You know, I think quilts, you know, perhaps it's a little child's frilly quilt and I think flowers are much better suited or swirls than just straight lines. Kids' quilts actually are a good example. You know, straight line quilting is not very exciting. So it just varies. I just try and get a feel from the quilt that I'm working on, honestly. Catherine, the charcoal would frame your beautiful quilt perfectly. Thank you. I did think about doing a facing where the binding doesn't show at all, but I don't know if my skills are up to that. Susan, Ron, I have the handy quilt clamps you mentioned, bought on Amazon. There you go. And they're just a round kind of pincer thing, and they're rubberized a bit, so you just clamp them over your wheels, and it holds your machine in one place or another.
That's it.
That's it. Okay, you guys. Coffee's almost done. Show must be over, right? It's been really fun quilting with you. One last quick recap. I've been quilting Crimson Christmas by Krista Moser of The Quilted Life. I did mine in a kind of scrappy red version. I know that she also has a kit available, and she is currently, today is November 7, so she started on November 5th with a sew-along. I don't know all the details of that, but there's extra input from her in YouTube videos, and so if you're wanting some hand-holding while you make this quilt, now's a great time to do it. There's a link in the comments to Krista's shop in this pattern, but also Krista Moser, thequiltedlife.com is probably the better place to go. So yeah,
It's all there.
it's all there. Mr. Producer, he's so good at that. It's all there in the comments, and it's also in the description below this episode if you're watching it as a replay. So this has been Live and Unscripted, and until next time, have a great day, whatever you're doing, and I'll get on to the next quilt. See you next time.